Podem anar una mica cap aquí i crido una mica més i... Se sent bé?
Ara et compta.
Però bueno, a l'inici de tot aquest procés convidada per participar en el Cinevare, havia pensat fer la peça a la via romana dins del sector de Madremanya. I després, als temes, es va decidir canviar per la plaça de les Bruixes, que potser hi ha un missatge aquí. No sé. I vaig reflexionar una mica sobre tot el que és ser bruixa. I no sé si sabeu que a Madremanya, el poble, el nom ve de Mater Magna, que és la gran mare. I la gran mare era Cicle, una deessa frigiana que venia de l'est i els romans la van anar portant i quan arriba aquí és una espècie de religió molt orgiàstica, molt extrem, no, també. On els homes que eren iniciats s'autocastraven i per ser un iniciat tenies que estar dins d'un forat de terra, posaven unes fustes a sobre, mataven un toro i tenies que posar la sang del toro dins de tots els orificis del cos. Molta marxa. Aquí a Madremanya, segurament, en tot el camp d'aquí, no volien deixar de ser seguidors i seguidors de Cicle, però el cristianisme no el volien deixar. Hi ha moltes coses que queden i, bueno, un és aquest lloc, que segurament és la plaça de les Bruixes perquè és un triangle. Hi ha 3 camins que s'ajunten. I sempre els creus de camins han sigut llocs on hi ha destí, està allà i hi ha moltes energies, no? Que poden ser també malífiques. Però com és un triangle és dolent, perquè el triangle representa la deessa. No? I també avui dia hi ha un símbol del que és sagrat però femení. I avui volia pensar sobre això demanant primer a quines persones aquí li han dit que ets una bruixa. Aixeca la mà.
És fascinant, totalment.
Les bruixes.
Que ser bruixa no és el mateix que ser bruixa. Nosaltres les bruixes, nosaltres. S'entén bé? Vale, sí. No sé com cabrem, potser que ens haurem de posar així, no? Perquè no cabrem al llac. I nosaltres tancarem els ulls també. No tens espai? Podem mirar. italiaans.
Basta?
Ciclica forza natura.
I think the garden, the whole family have always considered it a space that would be shared with other people, not something for our own private pleasure. So there's all sorts of possibilities, and we try to build spaces within the garden where things could happen, even maybe at the same time, and not interfere with each other. So you could have maybe a group working in a circle here, and then you could have someone working in the garden, and you wouldn't have to necessarily cross over around. So it's kind of building up of small intimate spaces.
Yeah, like we can follow this route, and it brings us to the shed.
Which is extraordinary that they're still here in December.
We're like,
But we haven't pulled it up because it's still incredible. It's still
and you
flowering.
still have the flower. And
Yeah, so it's much warmer than usual.
yeah. Have we seen that? We're seeing this, the flower. And, yeah, it's quite.
Yeah, everything just grows so
It
fast.
seems so alive,
Yeah.
you know, like.
Yeah, this is a quince tree which needs pruning badly. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs all the time, so it's a kind of non-stop. You can never really have enough time to do all the things that you could do in the garden. You know, we're putting in also some water so that we can.
But and you were telling me that for you it's really like healing also. Working the earth and
Since I became here, that's the only thing I could actually do without getting very bad palpitations. Will come in the garden, touching the soil. I think it's an electrical grounding that happens. And I think there's some new research that you showed me the other day that the more you work with soil, especially children, the better your immune system is. It has some kind of like positive feedback.
and there was like I think there was something they called geophagic where they were eating the earth, you know.
Yeah, no, it's very, very healing.
Yeah, and now we're seeing the amphitheater.
Yeah, this is a kind of the jewel in the crown.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that I've been thinking about for so many years. I have a fascination with ancient pre-Hellenic Greece and also archaeological ruins. I love walking around and imagining
And
just
oracles.
the aesthetic of the ruin. I like it's degraded and broken. So we've been talking about it for a long time, and finally a few months ago we decided we found someone who also was completely crazy about stones, and a stonemason, a local man who has a field just full of all of these incredible old stones, and he agreed to take on the project. Kind of financial loss for him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, also really inspired by the project, and the idea is that we'll be able to program events. So Uma, my daughter, you know that she's a singer, so they're thinking to program music.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to program the performances, and the amphitheatre will be used as a theatre as such. It's going to be very experimental, very open to different activities. But,
And also it's linked to your idea of the oracle.
the oracle, yeah. Well, it's
the
not
circular thing.
Yes, well,
Space.
I think this all goes back to I moved here from England in 1987, and I ended up through a series of coincidences living in this town which is called Madre Magna, which means the Great Mother, Madre Magna, because underneath the church of the village there's an ancient remains of Cibele's temple to the goddess Cibeles. So Cibeles is linked to the oracle. And the oracle has always held a fascination for me as someone who's been working with improvised performance art, with people, with information, with the creative process in so many different ways. The oracle just seems to be, in a way, a facet of contemporary performance art to me. There's a lot of things that we incorporate and we act out in performance art which actually are coming from somewhere else where we don't know. Not necessarily our own personal desires, rather things move through the body. And also, to an extent, leak out of the body. That's a phrase that Sandra Johnson used, which I love, that the body leaks.
Yeah.
So we leak out, and other people can pick up from this leakage, and without consciously deciding,
continuous lines.
Yes, you interact with this information in movement, which is a kind of thought process in movement, improvised performance art. I see it as a kind of philosophy, in a way, a practice of philosophy, where mind and body are together, and heart also important.
Yeah.
Heart, gut, mind join in this kind of like
At the center.
Yeah, very vivid process of being alive. And so then this summer we took a trip to really look for the oracle from here to Greece. So traveling through Italy, in Cuma, where there's a seat of the oracle, and to Dodona in Greece, where there's another seat, to Delphi, and then to the National Museum in Greece to check out all of the different artifacts and votive offerings, and really trying to imagine and unravel how life could have been at a time when maybe there was more equality, maybe we don't know, we imagine that there was, and maybe we had more skills of being able to listen to the planet.
And intuition also.
Yes, intuition as a way of knowing, which is often more trustworthy than our logical thinking processes, and often gives us the right information that we then don't listen to. So I'm very interested in how we select what we believe, how we select what we think our work is about. I'm fascinated by people's ideas of what they think they're doing, and then what I receive or someone else receives from that, and how
things that are unknown or unsaid, and yet they're there.
They're implicit.
That's what we. Yeah.
So you may think you have a concept, it's very clear, I'm working about this, but actually you're leaking out something else, and this is being communicated, and you're in a way you're free to allow yourself to leak in this idea of what I've called the vincula, or some word which comes from the material that joins bones to tendons and muscle. It's a kind of elastic bonding, and I think in performance art we elastically bond together, and for me they must be useful. So like in your arm joints, your leg joints, if it's not useful, then you don't get this idea of
the mobility,
this joining and the mobility, the elasticity, of how things come together and how things grow together and how things become useful together, and then when they're no longer useful, things change. So I like the idea of the vincula, and in relation to the oracular. The oracular is from, obviously the oration is from talking, or it would be a talking oracle, some information that arrives to you through language or through sound. But the vincula is something that is through the body. So I think this idea of kind of we join some psychic, physical, invisible bonding.
Yeah, sometimes we think about meeting new people, there's a chemistry, with some people, and some other people not at all, And when you're talking about the leaking, and how we can relate, and then when we don't relate, it changes. And I think this is we talk about intuition. This is really there. How to trust it,
Well, I think the trust is built by trying. You try it out. You think, okay, I'll go with this feeling and see what happens. And then if it works well for you and you feel better, then you trust it again, and so on. And I think a lot of people are much more likely to become hooked on the opposite of doing the thing that they know they shouldn't do. They don't feel it's right to do, but they do it anyway. I think there's a lot of people who explain to me there's a kind of bad habit you can get into. All of us, myself included, I'm sure. Bad habits are very hard to end, and the only way you can build up this confidence of
intuition is by practicing it. And so in the
Being
workshops,
present,
with the group, the Ocells al Cap, birds in the head, which is an expression in Catalan, which means you're a bit crazy. But for me, it was always linked to these votive Greek figures where you have a bird on the head is your connection to
You're
the divine
open.
and open to consciousness. So I think that the birds in the head has been a way of us practicing to become more intuitive, and through games, really, in a sense, they're a kind of games. It's a kind of training,
and also being intuitive together,
yeah,
which is particular.
Yes, because obviously when you have a group of people, when it's working well, there's a synergy. It adds up to more than a sum of its parts. It's something bigger than individual joining, and this is really exciting, and I think that's why group improvisation, when it works, can be so incredibly inspiring and positive and give you a lot back. It's also a very intimate activity, so I think it's often difficult to just go in with people you have no idea who they are, and with people you hardly know, because you are opening yourself up to this movement of energy, and so there has to be trust and you have to feel safe. So that's why also the group Ocells al Cap has been so incredible, because we have been able to, over years, build up this slow connections. It's not something you can force, relationships build up over time. It's not like you might think, I don't like this person intuitively, then you go into a relationship and it's terrible, and then at some point there's grace and something changes and it's good again. So if you have time and a lifetime to live through those kind of phases and you don't become impatient for results or something, then I think this is the kind of relationship.
And it's also to trying to do experiment with people that you feel that there's no connection, or there's maybe a confrontation even, but within the work it can bring something interesting of learning and sharing with others. And even the viewer can sense something, because it's all there in in life. So the idea is not to hide it.
No, and I think it's definitely there's different ways that you can relate in groups, obviously. And there are so many different groups, and every combination of people brings something different. But I think when it's like you said, when it works and when there is this trust, it is understandable by the audience. They become kind of hypnotized by it and they can't stop watching, and there's something happening real that isn't necessarily something they can understand with concept, but there's something energetic happening. And the opposite is true when there is no real connection, and when there's no kind of bonding and everyone's kind of split in their own little place doing their thing. It's very difficult for people to watch, and you find that the audience may disappear more easily, So but that might be in some ways an important process for the group. So
might be,
it's not really about pleasing the audience.
No,
it's not really about pleasing anyone. It's a kind of dedication to a practice of being together.
Yeah, and this is very interesting, talking about not pleasing the audience, but it's also talking about risk. We talked about that together in different times, but this idea of this space and what you want to do, and the improvised process, just to relate to what it is to always be close to this process of failure. Like but then it's how do you define this failure?
Failure is a kind of, I think it's a concept which is much to do with the capitalist society. Things fail if they don't work, if you don't get money. It depends on what your objectives are. So if you have a kind of ambition in your performance to, become a great performance artist or impress someone or make a lot of money, forget it, you're going to fail. So no, not really. Of course you might get there.
But usually
no, but the sense of failure, we all have that insecurity because we've been brought up in a society which values success over failure. But I always think that for failure and conflict there are opportunities for transformation, obviously. If you're going to go with it and become receptive to it and really listen to what's happening. Often this failure can bring this awareness of something that you hadn't seen before, or a huge change in direction. But you can't, you obviously, if you're going to take those risks in your work with people watching you, then you have to assume that might be difficult for you at some point. You know. That it's really, I think, about understanding what you are doing there in that place at that time, why you want to do the performance there, what your objectives are on a much deeper level. So I would say, for me, it's a kind of relationship to your internal aesthetics. Like, does it feel right? Does it feel proportional? Does it feel adequate?
Instead of how does it look and how is it received? Because that we can't control.
You can't control, no. And then there's this thing, you know, that who's watching you. So is it more difficult for you to make your performance in front of someone who impresses you and you want to impress, or your family, than complete strangers? Or, you know, these are all human things that we all go through, and there's nothing strange about it. But I think if you listen and you hear all these things before you start, you probably are going to be more relaxed while you're in that space, a certain level, even though there might be tension in the work, but there might be a certain confidence, coherence, I think is the word.
Or there may be stillness, complete stillness.
Yeah, I think it's a coherence that is between you and your environment and the others within that environment, and all of those living beings and objects that are there also, which all have their own kind of constellations of.
Hello, my name is Martine Viale, and today I have the great pleasure to be with Denis Blacker, a wonderful artist, friend and colleague. We are here in Madremanya, in that small village, in Catalonia, and I believe you've been living here since the 80s.
1987.
1987. And Denis' practice involved performance art, drawings, sculpture and video. And she also curated, organized and participated in numerous meetings and events related to performance art worldwide. And she recently also completed a PhD on Synchronicity and Consciousness. Synchronicity and Consciousness in Improvised Performance Art Practice. And that was in Northumbria University in Newcastle, so 2019. And so today the conversation will be around Denis' practice, as well as the ongoing project of Can Aubert and this amphitheater where we're sitting. So the motivation behind it, and also the importance of the interconnection between the daily actions and the artistic actions as a continuous line.
Thank you.
Denis, thank you for being here and accepting us, to do this conversation. I want to start by a memory that I had thinking about this conversation. You told me once, like I don't remember the context, but you said, I could continue doing solo work, but I'm not that interested about that. I rather do collective performance. And so when I look at your work, I realize that I can't really look at it as an isolated act, And also you refer to the word contingency. To talk about a relation to a bigger group or context. So could you talk more about this notion?
Well, I think firstly the idea that my interest has moved towards working with a group was definitely consolidated in the process of doing a PhD. When I was really looking at interconnection and synchronicity and the way we intercommunicate or intra-communicate. And I think that the solo work, I'm still making solo work, almost against my
your will?
My own will, because people ask me to do it. But and recently, because I've been so ill, I haven't been working on anything in particular for myself. Rather, I've been reading and thinking a lot more about the group and the idea that somehow, my experience really of working with the group, in which I really have seen and understood and shared, is this, that there's underlying what we're doing, there's something happening. There's something happening which allows us to know, understand and receive information that we didn't plan to do. So something like an undercurrent of, like you said, intuitive thinking and understanding, which I find really, really fascinating. And I also think that in this kind of listening to each other, and in the listening that the group is practicing towards our environment, there's information that could be of vital importance, I think, for the way we continue to live, as individuals, but also as a group. And I think experimenting with new ways of being together and coming together can only help that process, because we are all connected. So the more people there are thinking of ways to live a better life, or live more in harmony with our planet, to overcome the problems that surround us and that are happening to us around the world. There are so many different terrible things that can happen, also good things, but you need this sense of contingency, which is a kind of to be prepared for the future. But it also, in it, has the root of the word to touch, so it's to be touched by. It's like to be ready for things, you must be touched by the world. And so I think also to form part of a larger group. So this idea of community, well, not an idea, it's a reality of a community that can come together in a trusting environment and feel confident enough to experiment with not knowing, not doing,
but being connected.
But being connected and listening, really listening, and being open to hearing things that you might not have wanted to or thought were there, to really hear again. Because I think a lot of the time we have these, we've been taught also to have ideas, and then concepts.
And to execute them.
To put that out in the world as it is, and as if it were a product. And this is just not of interest to me. I don't learn anything like that. Yes, I can have a nice aesthetic idea. I've been trained for many years as an artist, so I can make something that looks sufficiently attractive to please someone. I imagine, but there wouldn't be for me any mystery in that.
And this is the idea, is the process is about learning.
Yes.
And so if you're just focusing on the product and you put it out there, it's like it's wrapped up in a box, like you go in a shopping mall and you buy a present and it's wrapped up, and then there's no other possibilities.
Yes, you're assuming that you have to over-explain yourself, I think. And art, when it's really powerful, it leaves so much space for the person who's looking at it to have and live their own process, because there are spaces in there for that allow that to happen, and you're not forcing in a kind of bombastic way an idea onto an audience where there is nothing left to imagine. It's just what it is, and that can be very therapeutic, and that can be very useful in a process of learning, but it might not be art. So then, how do you separate this idea that performance art has incorporated for so many years, this life and art running together, and how do you really make it possible to? We have to keep throwing in stones in this. How do you make it possible for the true, I don't know what you could say, the true conclusion or the true feeling of the performance can exist without you being obsessed about holding it to a certain shape or form.
And maybe accepting that a performance can be unfinished or unresolved.
Yes. I think in the processes that we become involved in improvisation, there's it's always open-ended. I think it's always there's never a point where you say, oh, okay, that's that, and that's the finished product, which means you can understand it like this, because you can't, for a start, you can't even see all the people at the same time. You can't see the whole thing, so you have to broaden your vision already to include a group of people maybe doing very different things at different times. So when you focus on one of those people, you're leaving the other person, you're missing something over there,
It's
so,
kind of added moments.
so because it's this river of a process, it's only alive as long as the people within it are focused and really communicating, and there really is a moment where that is gone, and then you can recognize it. I call this the consented time of performance, where it's with feeling, it's with agreement. At a certain moment in a group improvisation, it's like everyone knows it's over, even though someone might keep going, and there's a sense of, okay, that's it, I'm spent, I've done it, I finished that process, and it ends here. So the time becomes more elastic. It's not really about saying, okay, now we'll make it for an hour and then we'll stop, and you can do that, but maybe it finished for you after 15 minutes and you're still there, like, what am I doing here? So I think
which most structure, when you think about it, that we created to show performance art is about that. You're asked first, how long is it going to be? Your performance.
Yeah. Then can you send me a text explaining what you're going to do? Like, why would I do that? Can you imagine if in a publicity for a music concert, the artist had to explain where they're going with the meaning of each of their songs? I mean, it doesn't make sense. But this is just part of the whole industrialization, I think.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Of art.
And so, also I remember when we met, you were really deeply immersed already in what you call the vincular mind, and also with possibilities of synchronicity and telepathy. And I'm wondering, I don't know if we talked about that before, but what made you pursue this line of research, and to connect it to your own performance practice?
Well, I've said this many times, but because I've organized group performances and collective events, festivals with performance artists for many years, mainly working with women. Over the years it became like that. I saw every time we would have a meeting, particularly with the group Corpologia, which was, I think we started in 2014, meeting once a month, open to anyone, male, female, whatever, gender, race, color, whatever. Yeah. You completely.
And that was
free
here in this area.
In this area, free of any guidelines. So it was just about action and presence.
So you would meet, and would you come up with like a line, a direction, or you just people do?
We would just divide the total time if we were going to meet in a restaurant or in a bar or wherever we were going to meet. There were non-institutional spaces. We always met in places that were nothing to do with the institution. And then we would always have supper afterwards. So we would divide the time, say there were 2 hours or 3 hours. We would say there's 3 hours, 30 people, 10 minutes each, or there's 1 hour, there's 12 people, whatever. And it ended up being usually around 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Each person had only a very short time. And in those repeated events, began to become very clear that it didn't really matter who was there, whether it was new people or people who'd come to every meeting. There would be some kind of common theme that would emerge, even though we didn't plan it. With these 4 or 5 minute performances, there was a thread, say, 1 week everybody would appear with something white, or everyone would appear with
okay, so there was a kind of direction.
Yeah, every performance is different, but there was something that you could say there was a thread, or everybody broke something, or everybody used a circle, or not everybody, but a large proportion of the people.
Right.
And this became really a joke. So we'd say, hey, what was it today? It was, oh yeah, it was butter. Everyone used butter, or there were 9 people who used butter out of 12, and this would go on. And then I started thinking, how can this be? We have people we've never met before. It's not like if we were always the same people, you could begin to understand there's a language that we share because we've practice so often together. But also there is a certain aesthetic language in performance art where certain objects do get used again and again. Cling film,
Of course,
duct tape, or
glasses.
yeah, and so there's an element of that, but that can't explain why on this day,
Yeah.
this meeting, they were all overlapping in some way like that. So I began to read about telepathy and then realized that the current research, scientific research on telepathy is really fascinating because it's really re-engaging with ideas that maybe at the end of the last century or were dropped as being non-scientific. You know, if you can't prove there's a mechanism by which this works, then it's not scientific or it can't exist. You know, so if we don't know how telepathy works, then it doesn't exist. And
Or we burn the witches.
yeah, or we burn the witches,
For example.
Yeah. Yes.
Something that we can understand, or it's a bit outside of again the box or what we can control or conceive even.
Yeah, so now I mean there's so much research on not only on telepathy, on mediums, on the different ways that we obviously pass information, but currently we have no explanation for how that happens, and I find this very interesting. Also, it's parallel to this whole technology of mediated telepathy in technological development. So there'll be research now on, or there are actual products, sensors that you can put in your head and that allow you to, through the computer, pass your thinking to another person, your thoughts to another person in another country.
That would
Who's
be
wearing
great,
the same-
stopping the war, you know.
Well, if it was used for that, it would be great. But
Yeah.
I think this kind of technology is really dangerously invasive because if they can start to read your thoughts and
Yeah.
read your unspoken processes, you know, give them shape and meaning, then there's obvious questions there about privacy and really, yeah, also all of the negative questions about that ethical.
It's always equal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it depends how
it's
and
used.
who is using it.
Yeah.
For sure.
But you see, there's the thing. If it works anyway, telepathy, without the technology, then if we develop our own telepathic abilities, we can become kind of, you know, we can have our own field of communication with like-minded people. So yeah, it does become possible maybe to put all our minds together and help stop the war
Yeah.
by our intentions and our thoughts. Which goes back to the idea of prayer, really. You know, and why did people pray? Because that prayer has also been researched a lot and shown to actually have a physical effect. So what you desire for, you should be careful. What you should, you know, what you desire for.
Yeah, and I guess listening to you, I'm like, yeah, it would take that everybody is willing to let go of some very, very deep learned conditioning.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I'm opening myself to this, you know.
Yeah.
How to another kind of communication and way of living.
Yes, I think it. I mean, there's a huge area.
It's huge. Yeah.
It's a huge area. I would say that how we can start is by just listening more carefully to what's happening around us, and that allows you to make choices that are maybe better for you and the planet. But yeah, there have to be huge changes, you know. And just on this current electricity crisis or gas crisis, you know, we have to do without our heating maybe. Or these are big changes for people who we have become, in the West anyway, in developed countries, very complacent.
Yeah. Yeah, because we never lacked anything.
No.
We were
no,
born into this abundance where you don't think about electricity or water. It's
No,
there.
it's there, yeah.
You know,
exactly.
mind you live in a village. You have another relationship already to
Yeah.
that.
I think if you live in a countryside or in more rural areas, then you definitely have more contact with, you know, the reality.
Yeah, this is Earth.
Is-
Yeah.
yeah, but it's very different living in a city, and the cities are going, you know, obviously going to be the place forced by these changes right now because of the concentration of the population within that. This is why the group performance for me is interesting also though, because we are finding ways of getting on, you know, however difficult it might be, and however you might not agree with certain people within the group you practice with, but there is a great tolerance and resilience, yeah, and patience even, and I think it's really interesting to see how many groups have built up around.
And maybe do you think it's about also respect? When you respect the process and you respect the others.
Yes, respect as a way of allowing other people a certain degree of freedom while it doesn't negatively affect you. It's always finding this balance. I think,
the balance
between what you are willing to give and what you are willing to receive, and then what you know the opposite, what you don't want to receive. And I think that's something that gets negotiated pretty intensely in performance art.
Yeah, it's about borders also.
Yeah, like if there's something in a collective performance which is very invasive, very noisy, that continues, like, you know, how do you deal with that if you're trying to make a piece that's very quiet, or if you're feeling in a more introverted space? And these are lessons that are useful later in your day-to-day life.
And this is the risk of working with people that you don't know at all. That, you know, these moments you were talking earlier about, you know, if you're too much there in the noise, then you forget that there's something happening there. But if you don't know a group and let's say you're doing something more invisible, then, and there's a lot of noise, then how, but then again, we can't really say, teach the audience. We can't tell them you must see that.
No, and that's the thing. That's the magic of it. Surely, in the end, you have to believe in that. Your process is an art process, and if someone comes along, maybe just one person who really is given something and enjoys something or shares something in that moment that's meaningful to them, then that's a gift. That's not the only aim you have, but it's very satisfying when it happens, and it's very in public space, for example, it can often happen that you don't really know we have no idea who's going to be there, who's going to pass by.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And so there has to be this trust, like you say, there has to be respect, and you definitely have to listen, and maybe you have to change all your ideas suddenly to adapt to what's happening. And maybe something magical happens that you weren't expecting, and that's where it becomes really interesting, because no one is really planning that. That's happening as life goes through.
And there's a risk in that, but then at the end, the risk can serve your project or your action anyway.
Yeah, and it can provoke, people to think and question, and
because it's not so planned or it's unplanned, then it puts the artist or the person in a vulnerable state.
Yeah.
And this is really real. This is not acting.
No.
You've got to react. You've got to take decision on the moment when that's happening. If a house is burning, you're not staying in the house.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, So what are you doing with this material? All the informations are there.
Yeah.
Would you say, what you're talking about is about us training ourselves to become more sensitive and more receptive to what's happening? Then we can do the just action.
Yeah. I think that any kind of technique that might help you very naughty boy.
Let's throw some rocks.
To become more aware, more conscious of what you're doing. All of these practices that we do within the group as well, which time-honored practices of meditation, yoga, tai chi, whatever it is you do, that help to build up a kind of sense of balance within yourself, as strength, of knowing when and how and why to do things. I think these definitely help. Definitely help, because they're processes of self-awareness. So you become more aware of the possibilities of that moment for you with all of your possibilities and restrictions. But I think, in the street, it's you have to be ready for anything to happen at the same time as knowing exactly what you need and want to happen. So otherwise it's easy to get carried away by other people's performances or by something that that's going on and lose that sense of connection to what is right for you.
The sense of being at the center of yourself.
The inner aesthetics of it, really. I think. So when the inner aesthetics are strong and they're simple and they're clear, then it flows well.
So thinking about that, can you talk about this action you did recently? I think last summer. We're talking about oracles, and so you were asked to do a performance. What was the space? The Witches Square. The Witches Square.
Well, the Witches Cross. It was called the Crossroads. The Witches Crossroads. And I was invited to do a performance, and I was really unsure because I wasn't completely well yet. I'm still going through
recovering.
Yeah, still recovering, and so I'm not sure whether I could carry it off, if I had enough energy. But I agreed to do it in the end, and I wanted to do something close to the village on the old Roman road, which is a beautiful excavated road, which is like a small pathway. And I had some ideas of how I could interact with the public. And then I was called by the organisers, and they said, oh no, you can't do that because the route changed and the bus arrives here and there and the people are arriving in a bus, and you have to do it on the Witches Crossroad. And I thought, that's what you think about me, eh? So I was kind of a bit, I wasn't sure. But I really like where I've got. I think it's a great space, and you asked me to choose somewhere. I chose this space, and now you want me to change. Okay, I'll go with the change.
That led you to research on witches, probably.
So I did. I particularly in this area and in this village. So I realised that most of the houses have a lintel above the door that's carved with some kind of protection against witches and witchcraft. And often it's a triangle with a cross on top of it. And that led me to think, as the triangle is a sign of the goddess, years and years and years for obvious reasons. Then the cross is dominating, it's oppressing, and it's built on top of the goddess, it's over the top. And I said the village is called Madramania. Underneath the temple, at the church, the remains of the temple. So the history of this area is already deeply infused with culture that was centered on a female sacred figure. And then the Middle Ages happened, and witchcraft became this thing. And in this area, it was very terrible. And in some villages, I think we killed 16 people in one night, 16 women and girls in one night. 16 in one village close by here, and
there was not a lot of people to start with in the village.
So there's a small villages. I mean, there's only 200 people in our village now. And it led me to think about how witches are seen nowadays, even because it's an expression that people use here in Catalonia, but in general in Spain, that women are often called brujas or bruxa in Catalan.
Bruxa,
if you do something that's a little bit, I don't know, if you know something's going to happen, or if you behave very badly, or that people can say you're a bruxa. So at the beginning of the performance, I just had this idea of the triangle, and the women are generally the witches, not always. And
but often,
so I began the performance just asking the audience, this crossroads was actually a triangle, and this is the thing. It's probably called the crossroads of the witches because it's a meeting of three roads. So this makes the triangle, and any triangle is related to the goddess of witches. Now it became a witches. It was probably a sacred crossing at one point. But
And did you felt that?
No, it feels like you're just in the middle of the woods, and it's very overgrown, and there's just 3 tracks. So
Okay.
the audience came and they were standing, and I just had this idea of the triangle, and I had some very heavy objects, natural objects, wooden trunks, metal bars, I don't know, stones, that I would close the triangle with. So 2 sides of the triangle were marked with a cloth, and the 3rd side was marked with heavy objects. And in my mind I had this idea of somehow speaking to the earth through throwing heavy objects onto the ground. But I asked the audience, who here has been called a witch? And there was a kind of uproar of female voices. Yeah. And all of the hands went up. And I was like, okay, not one male figure.
Only one or
No,
none?
none. And
Okay.
I said, okay, then come and lie down on this cloth with your head to the ground and just listen to the earth. And anyone who has never been called a witch can throw these objects very hard onto the floor if you want. So then this moment happened where there were, I don't know, about 30 women or something, or 20, lying, listening in a fetal position. So I ordered them in a fetal position. These are things that happen as I'm talking. I don't really know how I'm going to do it. until the
And you're
people are-
part of it. You're part of this group.
Yes, so then I lie down with them, and we lay down for a long time. And then it was very quiet apart from the sound of these things hitting the ground, you know?
And you wouldn't, because you're lying down on one side, you don't know where the sound is.
No.
Yeah, so that's scary.
So
a
it
bit.
comes through the
Yeah.
vibration of
The earth.
the earth. And it went on. We didn't have very much time altogether. So I was worried about time, so I thought, okay, it's long enough. And I looked up. Everyone was completely gone.
Yeah.
We left it a bit longer, and then finally I sort of said, okay, it's over, that's it. Oh no, I forgot a very important thing. I asked them to, if they heard anything, to memorize it so we could share it afterwards. So anything that they might hear through the sound of the earth, then we would share it. Anyway, they didn't kind of wake up. So I sort of go to the next woman, Jimmy, wake up. And then everyone was like, oh no, they didn't want to get up. And so they get up, and then finally everyone shared their...
Like the need to be close to the earth and to...
Yeah, they were
because
really
it's kind of letting go, everything. You're just there.
It's something very pleasurable about
And
it.
yeah,
And
you're
also,
supported.
in that thing of not doing anything. There's nothing asked of you, you're just listening. And in that listening, it's kind of allowing you this time and moment to imagine and to be part of this larger group.
And you feel, you see, there's a need in society to do that.
I think so, yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think maybe when we talk about responsibility of being an artist, this is also a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, to try to invite people to share this space with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
which what you were doing in that performance.
Yeah, I think it's vitally important, that we create spaces. That's why, really, I think as an organizer, what I've learned most, and first, in some ways, it was just to have contact with other artists. I started organizing festivals because we're in the middle of nowhere. But later, I understand it as the creation of certain spaces where things can happen, and the less you direct that space, and the stronger the foundations are, the safer people feel to be really free to create. So you create a space where something can happen, where we agree on a certain limits, that we're not going to harm each other, we agree, to respect each other, and then from there this space can allow each person to do whatever they like. Like sometimes I think festivals have these themes, and then you feel like you have to fit into a theme, and it's already kind of pushing you in a certain direction, which is a different challenge.
It's a different thing,
challenge.
yeah.
It's a space with a kind of, like the dish of the day or something. Whereas these more neutral spaces, I think, allow for more surprises maybe.
But also, we were talking about this yesterday. We live in uncertain times. Like it's really unsure, and I've been sharing with you, like for me, this question about what work do I do in this context? you know, and because we are affected, the bodies, you know, and the mind and everything is affected by these times, you know, even though it's happening elsewhere, all that COVID, and then now Ukraine, and everything is happening, and we receive this, you know, and sometimes I feel, you know, okay, well, it seems so outside, you know, it seems not accurate to make words, but then yet for me, I realize when I really think about it that art is really essential to me. So I'm wondering how, you know,
Where do you start again?
yeah, what are your thoughts about this now?
Yeah. Well, I think the times we're living in, it's just really the beginning of a greater collapse. And even though I'm an optimist, I still think it's a good idea to begin to be prepared for things that we might not be able to control, you know, from the force of nature to wars, and to support our community as far as we can, you know, by connecting and communicating with them. With Yalina, for example, in Ukraine, we've been in contact a lot.
Which she was in an interview also,
Yeah, and we've been able to help her a little bit, you know, a tiny bit, with helping her students to be able to show their work in the UK. And you can just reach out and see what the earth brings back to you, because at some point we'll be in that situation where we are, you know, we're also maybe homeless in the sense of not able to just live our lives in that space anymore for whatever reason, you know? So yeah, every day I feel like is important. Every day I really do give thanks for being where I am and being able to survive so far, so, you know, so far so good. And therefore illness is another thing that gives that to you, mind you. Being ill has also given me that sense of gratitude for just being well. So, but I think as artists, and particularly with this idea of improvisation and intercommunication, in everyday life you can put it into action. You can actually interact with people in a very clear, simple way, which just can produce magical results. You know? So yeah, I would say just put it out there into your life, try it out, and try to really listen to your intuition and know where that could take you in the day-to-day life, because it's really fascinating. I'm a naturally shy person, even though, you know, no one would say that, but actually I am, and to get out and do stuff, I've always found it really terrifying, actually. But with this way of thinking, you don't start off from the sense of myself. You start off from the sense of possible connections to
that's very
experience.
important. Yeah,
you don't feel
it's
shy
me,
and nervous.
It's,
No.
It's me that
you've got
people
nothing
are
to
looking.
lose in a way.
Yeah,
You've got nothing to lose if you are very clear, you know. And that's why these skills are important, because you don't want to go and force yourself into a situation you're not wanted in, or you know, in real life get yourself into conflicts that are unnecessary. So it's really it's a question of
Hello. Are you hearing me? I can't hear you, Danny.
I think it's better. I unmuted myself.
Yes. Nice to see you. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, hi everybody. We are now live and ready for your questions. So, if you can type them in the chat, otherwise, Danny, we can just, if you want to add something to this interview or in general to what we discuss together.
Yeah, see if there's anyone who wants to ask anything specific.
Yeah. Well, there was one question about the piece you did, the collective piece you did about the witch. Is it available for people to watch?
I think the Art y Gavarras, the festival that organized it. They have it on their webpage. Yeah, I think I can try and find the link if you like.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you
can you type in the chat, because I don't seem to be able to. Yeah.
I'll just put the link into. It's the 2002. I don't know where to put it in the comments. I have to put it in the private chat. Maybe you can distribute it. Okay.
So Corin is saying that it's also available to. Yeah, you did in the private chat there, but yeah, I cannot write in the collective either. She says it's available to. Okay, she wrote it down. It's also available to our YouTube channel. So
yeah.
So somebody's saying, I love your work. I'm just going to read the question because I love your work and so much about the simple interactions, and wondered where you are doing workshops, or do you have residencies?
At the moment, I have nothing planned in the near future, but if you follow my webpage, just my name.com, dennyvlaka.com, when I am doing workshops, I put them up on the webpage, so you could follow that there. Or if you write me an email, I can give you my email address, maybe, or Karen can do that, but you could write to me and I can put you on my mailing.
Your website is also available on the Flow and Body Inside, because you gave a conference, yeah, so it's easy to find that.
Okay, yeah. So I do usually do quite a lot of workshops, and really since confinement and COVID, and it's only just starting to pick up again. So yeah, I have one coming up, but it's a closed workshop in Barcelona, and yeah, I can let you know in a mailing list, probably best.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Denny, about this? How did you find the interview? It's been a while.
Yeah. I was looking pretty grey still. No, it's funny when you, obviously your memory's terrible. Well, my memory's terrible, not your memory.
Me too, yes.
I can't remember what I talked about. But it was, yeah, it's interesting to see how much the garden's grown since then also, because it's really, really, really grown in the year.
Yarina was there. She says, I want to say thank you to both for this conversation.
Oh, Yarina, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think sometimes there was a bit of problem with the sound because of the wind, but we wanted to be outside in the garden, didn't we? And that was the price to pay.
I think it was great to be in the garden, and also because you know, I've been working with you through years, and this idea of life work is very linked, and it was so important for me to present you in your environment, you know, with the dogs, with everything that's happening, because
yeah,
you know, like you mentioned, it's also very important to, when we eat together, we do, you know, it's not only the artwork per se, but everything is part of the work.
Yeah, the social spaces, we're very careful to maintain the social spaces, you know, for the fun of it. I mean, really, this has to be some pleasure in art making too. And,
yes.
And I think that the social part of eating and talking and, you know, kind of relaxing together, it's very important for building up of trust also with the people you're working with. You get to know people more, you know.
And also maybe to emphasize what you're saying is, well, personally, it's helping me to question my own habits, you know, because when you're alone making work, we all have a language, and we go in things that are more natural for us, let's say. But when you're in this group environment and sharing other moments of life, then it can bring different inspiration.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we really, I think, are nourished by each other. There's this sense of nourishment, which when you're giving out, or you're making works which are more maybe kind of about you being the center of attention, presenting your ideas in public, you can get very tired from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially over the last few years when we were all traveling so much like mad and working here and there and everywhere, and people just saying, I can't, I've got nothing left to give, I'm still going just because I need to make a living, but I'm not being nourished. So yeah, definitely being careful to keep the nourishment going.
Yeah, that therefore the garden was also a chosen site,
Yeah, and the vegetable garden, growing food, and people love it. Really does. When people come down into the garden, they see it full of things growing. It's very exciting,
Yeah, digging potatoes and everything. It must be
it's fun.
Yeah. So, any questions or comments or something people want to say? I feel like I've been coming in the middle of it. I feel like we have said everything, but we never know if there is something else. Can you see the comments?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's no more questions. I don't think.
Well, if there's, yeah. Yeah, so if we don't have any more questions, I really want to thank you, Denis, for all the work, and it was really a great time to do the. Oh, so I just tuned in 10 minutes ago. So okay, somebody just saying that they're going to look at the interview. Because this is the thing, is sometimes doesn't fit in the schedule of people. So so I just want to thank you, Denis, because it was really important. Like I like these kind of interviews that are really natural, and you've been really generous with that. So thank you very much. And it's always great to work with you and to be in Madremania in Canobert. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to tell people to keep watching Flow.
Yes, exactly. I actually want to say not only keep watching Flow, but we people have one more week to apply for the Flow and Body and Sight and symposium, and this is a really you've been part of it, Denis, and this is a very great platform, to come together with other artists, international artists, and to think together. There's workshops, there are conferences, there are performances online, and so it's during the lockdown, it really helped me and other artists to reconnect.
Yeah,
and so that's how the flow was brought to life, if I can say. And so it's if you want to join, you just apply and see what happened. But it's a great event, and the deadline is April 14th, 2023. And also my other ad is I will be in conversation April 15 with another very important and inspirational artist, Boris Niesleny. And so that's going to happen again 6:15 Europe time, and I believe it's 10:15 a.m. Chicago time. So if you can, please tune in. It's going to be a great conversation again. So this is it. Oh, yes. And Dorothea Rust is in conversation with Dimple Bisha. And that's going to be April 22nd, same time. So 11:15 for us in Europe. That's it. 11:15 Chicago time. I thought it was 10:15. I can't do the counting anymore. So this is it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in for Artist Focus, and we'll see you April 15 with Boris.
And thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Karen, for all the work. Thank you all for watching.